For 5 years, I believed I was broken. I remember the fertility clinic's fluorescent lights, the doctor's gentle voice explaining my low count, and the way my wife, Claire, squeezed my hand like it didn't matter. "We'll figure it out together," she said, and I loved her more for it. Every negative test, every awkward holiday dinner where someone asked when we'd start a family, I absorbed the shame alone. I never once suspected her. I built my identity around being the reason we couldn't have what everyone else seemed to get so easily. I just didn't know how wrong I was. Then came Ethan. Against every odd the doctors gave us, Claire got pregnant. I cried in the hospital parking lot before we even told anyone, certain some miracle had finally reached us. I held that boy like he was proof I wasn't as broken as I felt. I stopped counting the years of guilt. I stopped asking why. For 8 years, I coached his baseball games, read him bedtime stories, and never once looked at his face and saw anything but mine. He was loud like me. He laughed like me. I never questioned it. Grief has a way of making you stop asking questions once the pain finally lifts. The night everything changed started ordinary. Ethan spiked a fever that wouldn't break, and by midnight we were in the ER, watching machines hum around our son's small body. The doctor recommended a full panel of tests, standard procedure. Nothing alarming. I sat in that plastic chair holding Claire's hand, more scared than I'd ever been. Somewhere around 3 a.m., a resident asked casually if we had our own blood type information on file for a transfusion match. I said sure. Mine's O negative. Claire went quiet.
I didn't notice it then.
I was too busy watching my son breathe. The results came back 2 days later, once Ethan was stable and sleeping peacefully. A nurse handed me a folder by mistake, meant for the attending physician, and I opened it in the hallway without thinking twice. Blood type compatibility panel. My eyes skimmed the numbers, confused, then cold. Ethan's blood type made my own genetically impossible as his father. I read it 3 times, certain I was misunderstanding medical language I didn't know. But the words wouldn't rearrange themselves into anything else. I stood in that sterile hallway and felt the floor of my entire life quietly give way beneath me. I didn't confront Claire that night. I couldn't. I sat beside Ethan's hospital bed, watching his chest rise and fall, and I thought about every birthday, every scraped knee, every "I love you" Dad whispered before sleep.
None of that had changed.
But everything about how it started had. I thought about the fertility specialist who told me 5 years earlier that my numbers made conception extremely unlikely, though not impossible. I had clung to that word, unlikely, like a lifeline. I never considered that Claire might have needed me to keep clinging to it. When I finally asked her, 3 days later, in our kitchen, she didn't cry or deny it. She just sat down slowly, like she'd been waiting years for this exact moment to arrive. Ethan wasn't mine, she admitted. He was the result of one night, right when we were struggling hardest, with a coworker she swore meant nothing to her. She'd found out she was pregnant 2 weeks after our last failed round of treatment. She said she panicked, then convinced herself the timing was close enough, then simply chose silence over losing everything. 5 years of my guilt had been her insurance policy. I want to say I screamed. I didn't. I sat in stunned, hollow silence, replaying every moment I'd apologized to her for what I thought was my failure. Every fertility appointment where I'd offered to try again, to fix myself, to somehow do better. She had let me carry that weight alone, watched me shrink under it, and never once corrected the story. That was the part that broke something permanent in me, not the affair itself, but the years of watching me suffer for a wound that was never mine to bear. That silence was its own betrayal, quieter and crueler than the act. The following weeks blurred together in lawyers' offices and quiet, careful conversations about custody. Claire wanted to keep things amicable, a word that felt obscene given everything. But I made one thing clear immediately. None of this was Ethan's fault, and none of my love for him had changed. He didn't choose the circumstances of his existence any more than I had chosen 5 years of misplaced shame. Whatever happened between his mother and me, I refused to let him become collateral damage in a war he never started. That decision, oddly, was the first thing that felt solid beneath my feet again. The divorce finalized 8 months later. Claire moved 2 towns over, and we built an arrangement neither of us loved but both of us respected, entirely centered on Ethan's stability. I ran the DNA test again privately, not to doubt what I already knew, but to understand it fully on my own terms this time. The geneticist confirmed everything and gently reminded me that biology doesn't undo 8 years of fatherhood. I already knew that. I'd known it the moment I closed that folder in the hospital hallway and chose, instantly, without hesitation, to keep loving him anyway. People ask if I regret staying in his life the way I have. I never hesitate answering. Ethan is 12 now, taller than Claire, still loud, still laughing like the version of me he grew up watching. He doesn't know the full story yet, though someday he will, on his terms and timeline, not mine. What he knows is that I show up. I coach. I show up at every game, every school play, every ordinary Tuesday that never asked to be extraordinary. Biology gave him one story. I chose to give him another. That choice, I've realized, was mine all along. 5 years of guilt taught me something I never expected, that love built on truth survives, but love built on silence eventually collapses under its own weight. Claire's silence cost us our marriage. My choice, once I knew everything, saved my relationship with my son. I don't carry shame anymore, not for something that was never my failure to begin with. What I carry now is clarity, the knowledge that fatherhood was never about a blood test in a hospital folder. It was about every single day I showed up before I ever knew the truth. And every day since.